And go ahead, be seated, please. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Evan Gassner. I'm a civil rights attorney in Lexington, South Carolina. This is my first year judging a national level competition, though I've judged the state We the People competition here for about the last 12 or 13 years. I'm excited to be here and I look forward to your presentation.
And hello, my name is Francine Engel. I'm from Maryland. I'm a political scientist and I focus on American constitutional development. And I also work with the Maryland Council for Civic and History Education.
And my name is Jocelyn Broman. I am a We the People alumni. I competed at nationals back in 2006, which feels like several lifetimes ago. I am also an attorney and I work on Capitol Hill right now for Representative Don Young of Alaska.
My name is Katie Bremer. I'm Kayla Parsons. I'm Kennedy Goldsberry. I'm Morgan Mack. I'm Colby Gibbs. I'm Rachel Leeds. We're all seniors here at Laurel High School, and Mr. Denby is our teacher.
All right, great. Okay, so we have Unit 3. We're doing question 2. John Adams once said, "There is nothing I dread so much as a division of the Republic into two great parties, each arranged under its leader and in opposition to each other." What issues led to the formation of the original political parties? To what extent have those issues persisted in American political parties? What are the advantages and disadvantages of a unified or divided government? You can go whenever you're ready.
The formation of the original United States political parties first began during the ratification debates of the original Constitution. Delegates were split into two parties, Federalists and Anti-Federalists. Federalists were focused on a national government-centered system, whereas Anti-Federalists valued a more state-oriented government. Federalists, for example, wanted to establish a national bank with the necessary and proper clause given to Congress. Anti-Federalists such as Jefferson, who believed in the virtue of an agrarian society of independent farmers, maintained that clause should be interpreted as absolutely and indispensably necessary. Other divisions that pushed the framers to become politically opposed were foreign policy and the Alien and Sedition Acts. The term Republican was actually denoted during the Napoleonic Wars after tensions between the administration and those that supported a French alliance united citizens into forging the Republican Party. In response, Hamilton took the name Federalist. However, those names didn't yet constitute a party system. What really set apart the parties was the election of 1800, where Thomas Jefferson and Aaron Burr tied, and it wasn't clarified as to who should be in which office. Therefore, the House had to decide the election, and the 12th Amendment was ratified, splitting the ballot. This meant that candidates for president and vice president would run together on a ticket and would run against candidates of the opposing party. Political parties grew in popularity, with important politicians claiming the usefulness of a clear choice and also bridging distances between elected offices and ordinary citizens. Martin Van Buren led this positive reinforcement, and his ideals differed from original framers who believed that opposition would evaporate after coming together. Political parties ended up becoming an additional set of checks and balances alongside the ones enumerated in the Constitution. Feuding political parties have been a consistent issue that American politics have faced throughout the years. The two main parties have become so polarized that conservative Democrats and Democratic conservatives have practically disappeared. The split between the two has created an environment of opposition that becomes an obstacle and hinders progress. The two have been in a constant fight for power over the other, which isn't working in favor of the people, but instead for their own political gain. Parties are so focused on pushing their own agenda that many may not vote for what is necessary for the country to move forward, but instead vote to support their party or personal political goals above all else. The original issues that propelled us into these opposing sides continue to drive a wedge between us. The push for stronger government interference continues to be a topic of debate, and although the particular issues have changed, foreign policy and immigration continue to divide our parties. As Van Buren argued, a political party with clear principles offered voters a clear choice. Opposing views cause political parties to form, and they continue to be a venue for people to express their own beliefs.
Unifying the government sometimes looks like it may be the only option, but history has proved that while it seems favorable, it never really can occur. In a unified government, decisions could be made simpler and in a timely manner. Also, government officials could work to agree on significant decisions, such as when the parties banded together to pass the Americans with Disabilities Act. If the government was able to unify for a short period of time, it could help propel the country out of a rut. The way our government runs now, since we are so divided, We lose our ability to come together for agreement. However, David Hume argued that parties were inevitable due to results of diverse interest.
In Federalist 10, it is argued that, given the nature of man, factions are inevitable. As long as men hold different opinions, have different amounts of wealth, and own different amounts of property, they will continue to fraternize with those people who are most similar to them. When parties are divided, it helps keep the balance of power in check. And when a single party is in power, the other party exists to hold them accountable for their actions and criticize the policies and behaviors of that single party. Different party systems are inevitable. It's the way that they work together which determines how effective they can become.
Political parties have been around since the beginning of time, and more importantly, since the beginning of our country. They were formed to address issues from multiple viewpoints. They've grown with our country and have many advantages and disadvantages. Yet they continue to be integral to our government. We're now ready for your questions.
Thank you. So tell me, how does the winner-take-all system of electors impact our political parties?
I think that the way we use the Electoral College instead of a popular vote system for electing the president, I think that can anger some people when it comes to the elections, like the election of 2016 and the election of 2020. I think that it's become a really debated a really debated system. That's how it works. But I think it's the way the framers intended it. They wanted the states to be represented by the people who live there and the amount of people that are there. That's why like states like Montana get only 3 electoral votes. We have our 2 senators and we have a representative. And so I think that the way that the Electoral College uses those numbers and those representatives and those senators as our votes for our for our president, that it really just it works. It works because it represents everyone in that people. The people that they voted for are technically the people voting for their presidential candidate, because it doesn't matter if the way that the state votes, if that elector wants to switch sides, if he doesn't agree, they're allowed to do that. But I think in the main part that those electors vote for what the people want, and they're representative of that area that they are representing in a more national level.
Okay. So can you tell me, is a faction and a political party, are they the same thing?
I think they are not the same thing, as factions are held within political parties.
Factions are more towards their own personal interest, as political parties are more for policies and
Yeah, I think parties more represent like a whole country. Like they want to be representative of a whole country, and they want everyone to fall underneath them and to represent us as a whole. And I think factions are more like, we want to gain this much money, we want to have this much power. So I think that's the main difference, is the way that they're go towards their goals. Like parties want to represent and make policies and things to.
going off what my colleague said, political parties are more like the Big Ten politics, and factions are more for the people. And so the political parties are for a more wide range of people.
How do you think factions have served or not served the current political parties that we have in the United States?
So I think some factions may have issues that they personally as a group want to address. And I think that political parties can take it as a bigger issue and actually get the issue fixed, as they're bigger and more representative than the factions.
I think that factions are kind of similar, not similar in the way that they are, but their beliefs in that as a third party systems is the way that the Republican and Democratic parties may look at these beliefs of the factions and these wants of these factions and maybe absolve it into their party and their beliefs, but hold it as more of a party standard. Like I think with the Green Party and the Libertarians, that the Democrats and the Republicans try to get each other on the other side because they want to absolve those votes from those third parties. I think the same kind of goes for factions. Like the bigger parties, the more powerful parties in the country, absorb those smaller beliefs and ideals, even though those people are really strong about it. They absorb them in so that they can get that vote.
So in your statement, you mentioned that political parties were inevitable. Does it mean that a two-party system is inevitable, or is it just parties generally?
I would say parties generally are inevitable. The two-party system was maybe in a way inevitable in itself, but it wasn't ever what the framers imagined. Like, it wasn't what they imagined. They imagined that political parties would form to solve matters of opposition, and then they would all come together united again after that opposition was settled. But I don't think they ever imagined a just specific two-party system. I think the ratification of the 12th Amendment is really what finally split those parties into two main parties, is because they had to, it wasn't just voting for this single person anymore, it was voting for these people to run the government, a president and a vice president. And I think that if we had a third party, if it was just people going against each other, that would maybe allow third parties to succeed. But since it's split ballots and it's between these two people running for president and vice president or Congress, that it's a little harder to get a third person in there, because they're just not going to get the majority of the votes. And when you want to get the majority of the votes, you got to get that like 50% margin. And I think that's really hard to do if there's three parties. And I think the two parties eventually became inevitable after the ballots were split.
Also, with these parties, we would use the term watchdogs, as in these parties keep each other in balance and keep them in check. So one doesn't overreach power, so they don't take too much control.
To add on to what my colleagues were saying, Martin Van Buren created the two-party system, and he created it as the Democrats and Republicans. And he created the Democrats to kind of be a more majority rule party, and have the Republicans be more of the minority rule, so that they could kind of keep the majority rule in check.
Do you think the parties today are doing a good job of that check and balance?
I think they're losing the balance a little bit. I think they're definitely checking each other, and they're definitely making sure the other ones aren't crossing the line. But I think the whole balance part is a little bit lost just when it comes to the parties. I think that it pretty much, when it comes down to partisan lines, people vote for their party. I read an article that 75% of people that's a rough number. 75% of people don't really learn anything about who they're electing. They look at their party and go, I'm going to vote for my party because that is a broad spectrum of things that I believe in. And so I think that the way people vote is really also affecting the outcome of how the parties are working, the checks. Like, Democrats going to propose a bill, the Republicans are going to go after that with everything they've got. I also read an article that people who identify as an independent party will still align with the party that most agrees with their interests. And so even though they think of themselves as an independent party, they still take part in that two-party system, which I think splits the party and makes it less equal.
Okay, so you talked about unified and divided government in your statement. And I was just wondering if you could clarify and give me a definition of what a unified government is or what a divided government is.
I think if we had to speak in more broad terms, I think a unified government would be a government that's willing to work together, compromise, kind of go for more of the people and what the people need to happen. And I think a really what we're looking at today with our system is a really divided government. It's really divided between Democrats and Republicans. And we talked about how there's not really any that are both, that are really bipartisan. We never really see those people. Never see parties really cross lines. And so I think that that's the way we're kind of divided. I think that in order for a government to work, you need to have those people that are going to vote for what's right instead of voting on a party line. So I think if I had to just explain it like that, that's how I would say it.
Time. Great job. Let's give the students a round of applause for their effort and their hard work today.
All right, sorry about that. Great job, everyone. I've said before, this I think is one of my least favorite questions. As a practicing attorney, I like stuff that's written down in the Constitution, statute somewhere, and you can point to it and it's either there or it's not. Talking about political parties is much less concrete and is a lot more opinion than it is right and wrong. But I thought you all did a great job. You had some some great examples. I can tell you put a lot of work in your presentation. Good job.
Yeah, I thought you did a wonderful job. You really had a lot to say during the follow-up questions. So that was really nice to see. One thing that I would maybe clarify with your definitions of unified and divided government. So usually when we talk about divided government in politics, we're talking about one political party in control of the executive branch and another political party in charge of the legislative branch. Or it could be divided that the House is one political party and the Senate is another political party. So you don't want to necessarily think about it in terms of divisions of people not necessarily getting along with each other, but that the government is divided in terms of who is in power within the institutions. Okay, so I would just maybe have you, think about that a little bit more. But overall, you did a fabulous job, and I really enjoyed hearing from you today.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll agree with my colleagues that it was a good discussion and we had some good thoughts come out of it as well. I liked how you told us the 1800s when the party system began. You talked about Martin Van Buren. You gave us this idea of factions and political parties aren't the same thing, and then we got into like the third parties question. And it was a wide range of what we were talking about. And for also the discussion of Electoral College and reminding us that it's the 12th Amendment that makes sure that the vice president and the president are on the same ticket for a party now. Like that, it was very obvious the founders didn't intend that, but we're like, nah, we want them on the same ticket. So we're gonna pass an amendment. So that's what we did. And so as you guys are thinking more about these issues, I'll echo Francine of like divided government and unified government can have a very technical term, but I will also definitely be aware of that, but also how you're talking about this kind of idea of bipartisanship and seeing as how both parties working together. So we don't see as much of it on the big issues, but I can tell you for a fact that most of the bills that the president signs are usually passed on a very high margin. They're just these smaller bills that you don't usually hear about, like the Keep Fish Fin Free Act 2.0. I'm not kidding, that is an actual bill, and it deals with fin fish up and harvesting and how to like control that in the Pacific and Atlantic Oceans. Not kidding. And so like these are like these bipartisan measures that a lot of Democrats and a lot of Republicans support, but they're not like these big like top tier issues like immigration or healthcare or things like that. So just as you're like thinking about what actually works in politics and works in Congress, just be aware that we do a lot of bipartisan work in many different areas. It's just usually what you hear about every day is a lot of the much more complicated issues like immigration of people agreeing that we need immigration reform, but the hard part is trying to figure out how do we go about it? Like what does that entail and what are the actual details? So you hear about the bipartisanship in big things occasionally, but there's a lot of it on more of the little things as well. So just be encouraged at that. And so as you guys are learning more about this issue, just be aware that there's a lot more going on than just the big ticket items. So, but I really enjoyed the discussion. I think you guys have a good handle on the issues and I look forward to good luck to you all.
Thank you.